Welcome to this month's installment of Brass Chats, brought to you by Monster Oil. What is this, 21 year?
Hey everyone, today we have the new principal trumpet player of the New York Philharmonic. He's been all over the world playing amazing happiness. He's been in the Atlanta Symphony, Philadelphia Orchestra, Chicago Symphony, just on and on and on. He probably has one of the best audition records, win-loss ratios ever. And he's arguably one of the most influential trumpet players alive. Mr. Chris Martin, thanks for being
Chris.
here, man.
Thanks, nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
You too, yeah. Let's get right in, and I want to know about your new appointment to the New York Philharmonic. How is everything going? Inside scoop. This is like the biggest thing to happen.
I don't know, I wouldn't say that. No. It's good. We've been here about 6 months, and it was a little bit crazy starting here in New York because I was still playing a little bit in Chicago. One of the conditions that I could get a leave of absence to come to New York was that I'd still have to play some weeks in Chicago and play a tour with them. So the first month or so I was back and forth, played here in New York a week, played Chicago a week, and then I was on a tour with them. But now we're here, and we've been here now for a good chunk of time, and we really love it. My wife and I never thought we would end up as New Yorkers, but we've turned into one, and we really love it. So,
Yeah,
right. From a musical perspective, from a brass perspective, it's like a dream come true, really, to be honest. Because I've been very lucky and very fortunate in my musical life to have done the things I've done. I grew up just a band kid. You know, my dad is a band director. He was a French horn player, French horn teacher. Still like, this much disappointed that I didn't play the horn, I think. But so for me to have ended up in Chicago and here, it's really, there aren't really any words to describe how fortunate I feel.
How has your playing changed in just the last 6 months? Has anything changed?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the first thing I would say is when I played with the New York guys with the Philharmonic Brass the first time, it felt like boom, like I'm home. And,
right away, just like
and
fit right in like a puzzle.
I knew some of these guys from before, from when I was in Atlanta, and I knew a couple of the guys in the brass section as students at Northwestern. And so there was some familiarity from my past, but really just like the sound and the music and the style and the attitude, and everybody was just like exactly where I'm coming from.
Dream scenario.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I really I pinch myself every day going in.
You come from the Barbara and Charlie dynasty.
Yeah.
At the Eastman. You went to Eastman before they moved on to Northwestern, correct?
Right. Yeah.
And what were the main points that you took away from your time with them?
I was part of that tradition, but I would say the first thing I would say is, I grew up in the Chicago School of Brass playing long before. My very first teacher, a guy named Richard Selby, who's a middle school band director, drum and bugle corps guy. He studied with Chikowitz. And then my longtime teacher, growing up as a kid, Larry Black, played in the Atlanta Symphony, taught everybody in the Southeast. The earliest musical memory I have, other than marching band rehearsals, is the Bud's recording of pictures. So that sound was in my head, that trumpet sound, that brass sound was in my head from the beginning.
Is that the Schulte recording?
The Schulte recording, yeah. And I grew up with that just locked into my brain. And so for me, studying with Barbara and Charlie was just a natural extension of that. Charlie loved to tell stories about Herseth, and Charlie played second to Herseth for a number of years, and he had some great stories about life in the section and life sitting next to Bud. But the most influential stories to me were talking about his sound and the way he played and the way he would attack, how everything was immediate and instant and clear and brilliant and precise, and there was never a doubt that it was coming.
Emphasis on clarity is a huge thing.
Absolutely,
That's a big thing.
absolutely. I mean, Charlie would always be sitting next to you in a lesson, and I'd be working on articulation, Longinati or a Clark, and he'd try to pick up his horn, and he'd stick his bell right in my head, and tongue, and it was the clearest, most immediate, crystal clear ping you've ever heard. And
ping, which is something
ping.
You hear Barbara.
Absolutely.
I mean, I haven't studied with Charlie, but Barbara talks about ping a lot.
Absolutely, and for me, that's immediately it's the first thing I work on every morning. After I find my sound, I find my voice, I see where I'm at, and then the next thing I do is find immediately that ping, because that's what it's all about. You know who else did that trick? That the bell in the face trick was Voisin. I took a lesson with Voisin in his basement, his famous basement, and working on Scheherazade, the last movement of Scheherazade, and he stuck his bell right in my face and played, and I've never heard anything like it. My approach to tone production is a lot of it's stamp. If you look at the first 3 pages of the stamp book, the way he speaks about air and attack and embouchure is to me exactly right. It's spot on. The Pierre Thibault, the way Thibault talks about the poo attack, getting the lips corners firm, the chin firm, and the lips forward into the mouthpiece, thinking of the syllable poo. That's exactly the way you should produce a sound on the trumpet. And so that's my first. That's the sort of the breakfast every day on the horn.
The who poo too, right?
Yeah.
So can we get into more detail about
sure.
this? Because this is probably one of the most important things for people to understand that they need to be consistent. They need to be in the right mindset and expected play. They don't know Zarathustra. Like the first thing you do. I mean, how do you get yourself there? So
the last time I played Zarathustra, the Tuesday rehearsal, we played the piece through, and then the conductor spent the second half working on it. And so we worked on the beginning, worked on the middle, got to the the mid section, and then right before the trumpet calls stopped, rehearsal was over. And then the next morning, so we had a Tuesday night concert, something else, I don't remember what it was. And then and then the next morning, Wednesday, 10 a.m., right on it. Yeah, and I'm like, wow, man, I'm glad I warmed up today.
So is the who poo too? I mean, that's how you do it. That's how you put yourself in a good position.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so can you describe maybe in detail what you do in the morning?
Everybody's different. And the main thing I would say is there's not one answer to everything, and I've tried a lot of things. I experiment all the time with ideas and visualization ideas, but also physically playing the horn. And for me, this is what I found to work the best. It's a combination of breath attack, lip attack, and then regular tongue attack. So the who is a breath attack, yeah? So so the breath comes first, then you bring the lips together to find the note. Nice, easy mezzo piano, and once you have that, so I might do a few of those on just a G or a C, third space C. So getting the sound going, making sure the air's free, that it comes from your belly with no tension and none of that stuff up here going on. Yeah, shoulders down, neck open, all the good things our teachers told us when we were 10. And then the poo attack is you set, for me the easiest way to think of embouchure is say the letter M, that sets the corners, then think poo, and that sets the middle. Then you release the air the same way you did with the who, and you should have an immediate, clear, pinging attack without the tongue. Mm-hmm. And once you have that, then when you add the tongue, it's like 100% consistent.
These are just on
95% of the time.
These are just on sustained notes. You don't really go into stamp with these breath attacks that much, or is it most?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And it's not. I don't do the same thing every single day, but this principle is the key thing, and you can use it on anything. You can use it on Zarathustra. You can use it on pictures. You can use it on opening a Mahler Fifth. You can use it on Charlie A2. So that fundamental idea, the idea that you breathe from your diaphragm, your shoulders are out, you relax, your throat's open, and then you blow from your diaphragm without using your shoulders, without using any tension, as little tension as possible, especially in the throat. And then the air comes to the lips are set, they're together, they're forward, yeah? And when those things are in combination and are working and in rhythm, then you're guaranteed 95% of the time.
95, that's good. Yeah. You kind of talked a little bit about how much of an influence Bud had on you.
Sure.
So when you combine these hoop-hoo two philosophies,
Yeah.
how do you take that into making the sound that you're kind of famous for?
Yeah, I would say, as many people have said on these brass chats before, it all starts with listening. I mean, that's how we find our sound in the first place. I mean, first we just honk on the horn and we make a sound, and then over time, as we get older, we try to refine it. You realize, okay, my sound is here. Phil Smith's sound is here. That's a long way to go. Well, actually, more likely to be like this, really. I mean, that's a long way to go. And so how am I going to get there? And for me, I started just playing with records, playing with CDs, playing a lot with Herseth, playing a lot with Phil, and thinking to myself, man, my sound is small, my sound is dull, my sound has... I remember thinking, even in high school, halfway through high school or so, I remember thinking, my sound, it's a pretty sound, but it doesn't have any, like, brilliance. It doesn't have any cut. It doesn't have any projection to it. And so I was every day playing with Herseth recordings, with Phil Smith's recordings, that Tom Stevens Janacek Sinfonietta with LA that is just killer. Yeah, kick ass. Can you say kick ass on brass chat?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know about the New York Phil archives, but brass chat is fine.
Sorry, guys. And so playing with those, trying to match, trying to find that sound, and if your brain is driving you, then your body will eventually figure out how to follow. For me, it was a combination of mentally being more aggressive, mentally being more on the front, not only in terms of attack and in terms of playing, but in terms of spirit. I'm a pretty mellow person by nature, which doesn't fit well with a trumpet most of the time, and so I had to learn to be somebody else. And I think you hear that a lot from a lot of people when you talk about playing music, making music. We all of us trumpet players, we're all we're all analytical. We're all sort of detail oriented, and especially in the practice room, I get very focused on small things and trying to make something perfect and balance and stack all the blocks just right. But then when you go onto the stage, you have to be somebody else. You have to let all of that go, and you have to be aggressive. You have to play as I tell my students, you have to play to the back seats of the hall. You have to make sure that the people sitting in the very back, in the very top, the poor people like behind the pillar who can't see anything, even they can hear what you're trying to say.
Yeah, Ethan has talked about this too. Ethan Bensdorf in the Phil. Talk about hearing yourself from the back of the hall, like how important that is.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. For me, there's sort of two parts to it. Yeah. One is there's a visualization thing that helps me a lot, and that is if I'm playing something that's louder, then I think about. I don't think about blowing big and wide. I think about blowing. I pick a spot. I'll pick a seat. And I'll blow to that spot because, for me, for all of us, I think on the trumpet, the bore's not that big, and so you can take a huge breath and blow a bunch of air, but you're just going to get backed up and play without efficiency, and you're going to get tense, and it doesn't work. So I pick a spot, I pick a seat, and I think about blowing to that spot, and I send my sound in as compact and focused a way to a spot. If I'm playing something soft, especially something soft and singing and sustain, I visualize playing, I'll visualize the four corners of the hall, the top two and the bottom two. And I try to send my sound that way when I'm playing softly.
I like how you
because
phrase
that kind of breath, that's the sound you want for soft. And to play loud and to play, a high A flat to open the Tchaikovsky Fourth Symphony, that's the breath you want. That's the sound you want. I think if you go back to this idea of attack and starting a sound on a trumpet, it's even a loud one, even a loud fortissimo aggressive attack, it's still a really small amount of action that's going on to make that, right? It's not that much air. It's not that much lip that's vibrating. It's not that big of a mouthpiece. It's not that big of a bore, right? So if we're thinking like huge breath, blow huge, it doesn't work. So what I'm always thinking about, and as an example, that Tchaikovsky fourth, that opening high A flats in the Tchaikovsky fourth, I take a breath that's about like this, and then I let it go. But because for me, it's about 3/4 of a breath. But for me, it's all about compression, and it's all about getting that immediate brilliance. And if you've got that ping and that immediate boom, then from there you can sustain the sound, but it's more relaxed, and you make more of it with less effort. So I would say most of my practice, I spend about half of it with music, and half of it without music. Just memorized exercises, or my own exercises based on stamp a lot of the time, based on Schlossberg, and I'll spend it with a tuner, and I'll spend it with. I do a lot, and since I have a tiny little room, I play a lot with reverb, with electronic reverb.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes mostly like just a tiny bit, just so it feels like a space, a little bit more space. I find you play a lot more healthily. With a little bit of that instead of in a completely dead room.
Something else that I took away from you when I was a little bit younger, you mentioned that you do a lot of your maybe bulk work or fundamentals or practice in general. I don't know, but in the evening.
Yeah, not so much. Not so much these days. I wouldn't say. I do most of it. I'm really married to morning practice.
Okay.
As like most of us are, I think, but it's nothing new. But I have a 2-year-old who gets up early, and so I'm up, early anyway. And so for me, morning warm up, especially if I can get it in and done at least 2-3 hours before rehearsal, then to me that's my best setup.
So if you have a 9 o'clock rehearsal, you're not there. You could do like an hour session beforehand.
Yeah, I usually do. So rehearsals are 10 here, mercifully 10 a.m. And I do usually 45 minutes in the morning.
Does that usually entail like fundamental? I mean, obviously part of it's your warm up, but is it all warm up? Would you work on rep, or is it pretty much just getting your day?
Yeah, I mean, I would say on an average day, I would say it's probably 5 minutes of some breathing. For me, there's a great page of breathing exercises that came down. I got from Gail Williams. It came down from Jacobs. That's a nice one. The way, I think for most trumpet players, the way Stamp speaks about breathing in that opening, in the opening of the blue Stamp book, or blue or green, the Swiss one, the Swiss version. The way he speaks about breathing is all most trumpet players ever need to know. Because we don't need massive amounts of air. We don't need liters and liters. We just need to use what we've got the most efficient way. And so for me, this is a long answer to your question, but for me, 5 minutes, a little breathing, lip buzzing, mouthpiece buzzing, lead pipe buzzing, and then into the B flat. And that's sort of how I build my sound. And using the who and the poo and the two, all those things together in that process. And then it's probably 20 minutes fundamentals, 25, maybe 30, depending on the day, depending on what I need. And then 10 or 15 minutes working on some etudes, working on some rep. I got a concerto next month. It's kicking my butt. It's really hard. So that comes into every single, something like that, a big piece like that comes into every single session, no matter what. I think it's important, if you have time, if you have the chop space, if you're playing Mahler 7 twice in one day and probably not practicing super hard, outside of that. But if it's a standard day, it's important to do, I think, good fundamental work and good rep work all the time.
Okay, auditions. Your win-loss ratio. It's pretty good.
Maybe. I've taken a lot of auditions though.
Really?
Not so many lately, but
well,
when I was younger, when I was in college, and then in my 20s, I took a lot of auditions. I auditioned for the CSO 3 times before I got the job. 3 times over about 5 years before I got the gig.
So were you there for when Craig Morris got?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were there for that audition.
Yeah.
You were there to replace him, and then there was a no hire or something.
I was there. I played in the finals. I played in the finals. Is that right? I think I played in the finals when Craig got the job.
Okay.
Then I went one more time, and then I went to Atlanta, I was in Atlanta then, and then I didn't take any for a year or two, and then in 2004, I went back and auditioned, and that's when I got the job then.
So I mean, you say you've taken a lot. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how
I
many
would
you
say
took before that.
like
but
number-wise.
yeah.
Probably 15 or 16.
15 or 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, how did you figure out how to win? This
Yeah.
Basic question. How did you figure it out?
Yeah. I mean, to me, the most important thing was I knew how I wanted to play. I knew what I wanted my sound to be. I knew how I wanted to sound. I knew, I'd listened to so many great players. Phil and Bud and Jim Thompson and Phil Collins and Tom Stevens, as I said, and Winton and Håkan and all these guys. The list goes on and on and on and on. I'd listened to so many of these guys. I knew what I wanted to sound like, and I knew where I was, and I knew where I wanted to be. And having that honest conversation with yourself is everything, right? And if you know, even if you're not here yet, if you know you're here, then you can go into an audition and you can say, okay, so it's whatever, Monday, 9 a.m., and I know I'm here, so that's all I can expect from myself. And so you go for that. I don't expect to play like Phil Smith today. I'm going to try, but I'm not going to feel like I'm not going to feel like a failure if I don't play like Phil Smith. I'm going to do the best I can. And so if you have that kind of understanding of where you're at, that takes some of the pressure off for me. But then the other thing is, I never felt in an audition like I was competing with other people. I always felt like I was competing with myself. I kept a notebook in every audition I ever took, like a practice log, same thing, but an audition log. And I kept notes about, what I did that morning. How did I warm up? What did I play in warm up? What did I do, when I got to the hall? And one of the reasons I did this is because one of the biggest mistakes I made for several years when I'd go to an audition is I'd feel really insecure, like, man, I'm not, I don't think I really belong here. I'm not sure if I'm good enough. And so I would just practice like the whole time. Like
in the warm-up room with 12 other people. It's
and
Clark's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I started keeping notes as a way to just occupy my mind and focus on something more positive rather than blowing my face out and then going on stage like, I wonder why no notes are coming out, because I played for 2 hours. When I auditioned for the Philharmonic for the first time as a freshman at Eastman, which was way too young to be doing that, but kids, I was warming up in the practice room, playing all the licks, and Carl Schiebler, the fantastic longtime personnel manager of the Philharmonic, who passed away sadly this year, he in the middle of me playing through something for the 12th time, he threw the door open and he's like, "Kid, save it for the stage already." And that was a good lesson to me. I was like, wow, yeah, okay, clearly I'm practicing way too much. If the personnel manager,
the guy who's heard a lot,
yeah,
telling me to cool it.
Yeah. So anything you can do to stay in yourself. For me, it was taking notes really helped.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You talk about something that a lot of people, especially in like the orchestral world, talk about. Jim Wilt and Tom Hooten specifically, I'm thinking of. They talk about just being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And you say, well, I knew how I always wanted to sound it. I knew how I always wanted to sound.
I wanted to sound good.
I wanted to sound it so amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's got to be something you have to have. That's like a non-negotiable. I mean,
sure.
Maybe if you're not honest with yourself and you're a good trumpet player, you might be able to get somewhere. But like, if you just have no idea what to sound like, I mean.
Yo, you're absolutely right.
And that goes back to the emulation thing that you're talking about when you're growing up. You have to be glued to that.
The better your ears are, the better you'll play. And some people are born with an absolute gift to play the trumpet. Some people are born with perfect pitch, with relative pitch. But I still think even if you had all of those tools given to you at birth, I still think you have to grow your ears. You have to grow your concept of sound, and your development has to come from the work. And not only the work in the practice room, but work in listening, and work in listening to CDs, to recordings, but listening to live music. That's the thing, and that's the hard thing to do. Everybody's busy now, everybody's working hard all the time, and it's tough to listen, to keep listening, but I remind myself daily, like, I have to listen to music today. Like, I've got to listen. And I'm lucky to play with the people that I play with. I'm lucky to hear playing every day that I'm like, man, I gotta work on that. That's sick, you know.
Well, we should point out before we turn on the cameras, you pulled out your cell phone and you had the Phil Smith highlights CD of his career
Is
just
it
up
still
on
there?
his phone. So this is legit, everybody. Just so you know.
Adam Luffman texted me. He messed it up.
Oh, well, anyway, he pulled up his phone. It was like Phil Smith.
He just did that before the interview. He just did that.
He might have been prepared for that. Yeah, you're right. He got the questions. The questions leaked before the interview. That's what.
Yeah,
No, but that's.
I knew we should have prepared in Trump Tower.
but back to what you said about being honest. It's that same idea that you kind of have to have two personalities to perform, I think, in anything, but especially to be a trumpet player, you have to be brutally honest with yourself, your own worst critic. And anybody who knows me well will tell you that I'm hard on myself with my own playing, and I'm very unforgiving of mistakes. Not with other people. I'm very I'm very cool with other people, but for myself, I take it really hard. If I have a bad concert, I take it. It's like an insult to myself, and so for me, I've worked really hard over the years to turn that into something positive, which is to figure out, okay, why am I having this issue? What's going on? What's the problem? And treat it like a challenge and try and flip that into, okay, work harder, work smarter, Sometimes that means practice harder. Sometimes that means maybe I should take a break and come back fresh.
Yeah.
So having that level of honesty, that level of self-criticism means that whatever anybody else says doesn't get to you as much. Even not winning an audition, even a bad review, even whatever they do on Trumpet Herald, you know what I mean?
So then,
what do they do on Trumpet Herald?
I'm not really sure. You can buy things,
that's
and
cool.
you can talk smack. That's all I know.
That's cool. It's a good website.
Yeah,
man.
it's a great website. Talk smack or Trumpet Herald?
Buy things and talk smack.
Talksmack.com. So, real quick though, what's the first thing you think of? If you're thinking back to your auditions in Chicago, Philadelphia, and Atlanta, when you walk into the room, what's on your mind? What do you think? What do you say to yourself? Do you turn that? You just look around and be like, I'm pretty lucky to play here, or do you just go like, well, I'm prepared. I'm going to win this job. What's going on in your head when you walk on stage?
Yeah. So
if you're lucky to play an audition on stage, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'll tell you two stories. I'll tell you one story. The last audition I played, which was here in New York. I hadn't taken an audition in 11 years because I'd been in Chicago and I felt like I was new to the game, and I got to the hall and I hadn't played on the stage since I was a kid in high school and a kid in college, and so I felt more sort of not nervous, but I felt more sort of apprehensive about it than I had expected, because it felt like something I hadn't done. It'd been so long, it felt new again. And so I started thinking, okay, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to play in this hall. I'm excited to play, with these people, for these people. And, so who cares if you don't win, I mean, it stinks if you don't win, but to me, I focused on the process of the day and the process of playing and looking forward to that. And to me, and I think back to the first audition I won, which was for Philly Orchestra, and I was 22, and I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know anybody in the orchestra. I didn't know anybody in the trumpet section. I didn't know anybody in the town really at all. And so I'd come into town completely sort of blissfully unaware of anything. I didn't have any preconceived notions or and so I went into the hall and I just thought, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing, no idea what's going to happen. Nobody knows who I am, so I'm just going to play and have a good time and try and treat I tried to treat every round like it was like a solo concert, like a recital, and it worked. I mean, I play and I just try to play every excerpt the best I could and I literally not once did I think about, winning or losing, or advancing or not, or judgment. And then once I'd played, I'd go back to my room and I'd take my notes, and occupy my mind. And every note I look back on that notebook, and everything I wrote was like, that wasn't very good, or that was a little sharp, or that was a little whatever. But I kept advancing, and I kept treating every round like it was another chance to perform. And so that's what I've done since. First time I ever played the Mahler Fifth in Carnegie Hall with Chicago, it was the same experience. I remember Barenboim walking to the podium, and I remember looking at him, and I don't really remember anything until it was over. And those moments, like, that's what you live for, and that's why you practice and work hard and listen and study scores, and that's why we take lessons and pay all this money that we can drive all over creation to learn and improve and get better, so that we can maybe have a chance to be in that moment.
Yeah. Neil Bernson over in Pittsburgh, one of my old teachers, he told me he's
one of the funniest people.
Oh God, he's awesome, right? Yeah. Anyway, well, he told me a story about you, and he was in Chicago, I think maybe playing in the symphony when they needed people back when Bud had just left. Maybe he was, but anyway, he said he's talking to me about how important fitness is. And he said I was running down, just jogging, like a nice easy jog along the lake, and all of a sudden this guy just bolts past me. He's got a personal trainer screaming. Maybe there was a personal trainer, I'm not sure, but it was a very intense workout. Was the gist. And he said the person turned around and it was you.
Oh yeah, I used to every now and then I used to work out with this guy who was a boxer.
Okay,
Yeah.
So this is true. Neil, this isn't one of Neil's stories where he's like making it up.
Yeah, he punched me in the face once, and I was like, okay, I gotta stop doing this.
Your personal trainer punched you in the face.
I mean, he didn't mean. He sort of meant to, but not that hard. But like for him, he's a boxer. He gets punched in the face all the time. So he thought, I'm sure he thought it was like, that's no big deal. But I wasn't bleeding or anything. But I was at that moment that I was like, I should probably stop training for boxing with this guy.
Well, the moral of the story is that it's obviously important to you.
Yeah.
So how does it?
Yeah,
how does
absolutely.
it tie into trumpet playing? What's the 2-minute pitch?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's physical and psychological. The benefits are both. I think for me, most of my exercise these days is running or cycling, or I do a little bit of weight stuff, but not that much. Just enough to stay, just so I don't get injured. And for me, the biggest physical benefit is that I always feel that my breath is better. I don't feel like I have lots more air. I don't feel like I can play twice as loud, but I feel like I use it better. If I'm in decent physical shape, and that ties into the second thing, which is the stress release, the endorphin release you get from exercise is huge for me. So I've been playing trumpet in orchestras now this is 20 years. This will be 20 years, and I'm still like for me, I still feel like I'm still trying to master how to be a better performer. Because I'm, again, like I said to you before, I'm kind of mellow. I'm like a little bit introverted. Like I kind of like keep to myself, and so for me to go out on stage is still sometimes doesn't feel completely natural. And so for me, having exercise and being able to relax and let all that go and focus again helps me when I go back out on stage for the next concert to feel centered and to feel really like I know what I want to say.
If you could put anything on the billboard, what would you put on the billboard? And let's take that and make it specifically for trumpet players or musicians. Yeah. If you could put anything on a billboard, what would it be?
I mean, it's a hard thing to do, but I think to say the first thing you got to do is listen, man. I remember, the first time I heard Doc Severinsen, I was like, I got to do that thing. And I still can't do it, but I'm still trying. I'm doing like my version of being Doc.
Right.
And so I would say, like listen and believe that you can do it, but then be honest about what you're really doing. That's the thing.
Mr. Martin, it's time for the monster round.
Okay, all right.
Ready? Yeah.
I'm ready. Hang on.
Maybe get your posture ready.
Okay.
If you have time to do breathing exercises, now's the time. It's good.
Okay.
All right, time's up. Favorite car in the world?
Favorite car in the world?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I love my M3.
Oh, you have an M3? What year?
08.
Oh, that's awesome.
The first year with the V8. I love that car.
Most influential trumpet player of all time.
I would have to say, Hurst has probably changed modern trumpet playing. Yeah.
Yeah. What recording have you worn out more than any other recording?
That's a good one. That Schulte Pictures is up there. The New York Mahler 5 with Meta. Love that one. The long drawn out opening. I listened to that as a student in college. I don't know, 1,000 times at least.
Jesus,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's the number one mistake people make in auditions?
Worrying too much about what other people think.
The best thing you took away from DCI?
What it sounds like when a group of brass players is completely on the same page.
What is something every trumpet player could do today to see results tomorrow?
Poo attack.
Favorite place in the world to vacation?
Yeah, like Sonoma.
Sonoma.
Yeah.
What book would you recommend your friends read?
It's probably Fight Your Fear and Win. Don
Fight
Green
Your
book.
Fear and Win.
Yeah.
Who wrote that?
Don Green.
Oh, Don Green.
Yeah.
The best movie ever made?
I mean, dude. Star Wars.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Your brother, Mike Martin, in the Boston Symphony Orchestra, says he taught you everything you know. Would you like to care to comment? Or
No, he didn't.
No comment? I said no,
sorry,
No, he
Mike.
didn't.
Oh.
Sorry, Mike.
He
What
did,
mouth?
I would say this. My brother taught me. He taught me what real self-confidence is. He's a tough kid. I mean, even from his time as a 12-year-old, he was a confident kid. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew who he was. And when he told me he wanted to play the trumpet, I said, "Are you really? Are you sure you want to do that? Like it's, you want us to both be trumpet players?" And he said, "Yeah." And he did it. He did it.
We had a good time with him.
And he came at it a completely different way than I did, but he did it. So he's a good guy.
Yeah, agreed. The best musician alive?
Barbara Hannigan.
Favorite sport?
For me to play, I'd say cycling. To watch, I'd say soccer.
And how has your playing changed over the last 10 years, if any?
Yeah, some things have gotten easier. My sound's gotten a little bigger. Some techniques gotten a little easier. Piccolo trumpet's gotten harder.
If you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be at any point in your life? If you could tell yourself one thing.
I would tell myself I'd stop caring about what other people think. I would say that to myself as early as I could.
And
Life's too short to worry about other people judging you. It's way too short.
Tom Brown's Monsters.
Well, that's some good ones in there, man. Something about a plane crash. That's some good ones.
All right. This is from Tom Brown. These are not my questions. Tom Brown. Who are your favorite 3 drum corps?
I'd have to say, as a kid, I was totally in love with Madison Scouts, Blue Devils, and I'm gonna lose some friends.
Everybody else.
Everybody else, yeah.
Everyone else is amazing. Everyone else is
amazing.
first place, maybe. Muppets, Fat Albert, or Sesame Street?
Good question.
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
That's good. I've got to go Muppets all the way.
The greatest rock album of all time?
I would say. I mean, there's so many, but there's at least 3 by Rush. I really like 2112, but there's so many great ones.
If you could play duets with any trumpet player in history, who would it be?
I've never played with Hoken. I'd like to play duets with Hoken. I mean, I
Oh,
played on
man.
stage with him, but never duets. So, yeah, I'd like to play duets with Hoken.
Your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, what's the big one? Brontosaurus?
Brontosaurus?
Yeah.
He's omnivore. Wait.
No.
Vegetarian.
Herbivore.
Herbivore. You're right. They don't eat.
Yeah, I like the brontosaurus. I just like the vibe. Like any animal that big with a head that small, it's very non-threatening. I like that.
And the last of Tom's beautiful monster questions.
Good questions, man.
I said they were beautiful. The best purchase you've made under $100 in the last year.
I'd say probably my second burp, because my first burp that I've had since I was in high school broke. So.
Replacement burp.
And I was like, I don't need it anymore. I'm cool. You know, I'm 41 now. I can do this. And after a week, I was like,
I need my burp.
I need my burp.
You had withdrawals after a week. That's awesome.
What about the plane crash question?
You want me to ask him?
That was my best one.
If the pilot dies, which of the three of us would you trust to land the plane?
Or yourself.
Oh, or yourself. Who would you choose?
I would choose to call my wife and tell her I loved her.
Chris Martin, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, guys.
It's awesome.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.